This is Kat. Can they see me?
Yeah.
Right here.
No.
Kat from Kat's Creations. So we're trying a different camera angle, especially when we're doing the rag bow, so that you guys could have the same view that I do. It makes it easier for me to teach and work at the same time as it is for you guys to watch and learn. So just be like if you're standing next to me as I would be teaching you, because we don't really teach across from us, we teach from behind. So today in our private tutorial, so private, no sharing, this is the rag bow technique, and it's super simple. I don't think that it's going to go too long. Everyone's going to have their own variation of how they're going to kind of put it together. So, oh yay, so Steve's sharing with me. He's like letting me see what he sees. So, welcome. It seems like there's a lot of people already, right?
About 15, 16 people.
Okay, so who's joining us?
We've got Julie, Donna, Teresa, Deanna, Peggy, Kathy, Deborah, Faith, Sandra, Sherry, and that's about it so far.
Okay.
And Melody. Hi, Melody.
So perfect.
Hi, gals.
So the first thing that you're going to have to decide when you're making your rag bow is how long do you want it to be. Like when I was making it for Steve's mom and doing it on a rag wreath. Actually, let me take this and move this over here. Thanks, babe. You want to look at your wreath. So here's your finished wreath. Let's pretend the bow's not here. You have to decide how long do you want your rag bow to be. How wide do you want your tails to be? Because you don't want to create, I don't know, a 2-foot rag bow where you have tails extending down 24 to 36 inches. You would obviously, you know, trim that up, or in the sake of saving fabric, you would make sure that you're cutting your pieces to where, let's say for example, putting it up here on my cutting mat, I didn't really want it to extend any more than 10 inches, because 10 inches from the very top of this cutting board to here is a pretty long tail. But, you know, there's some people who do the rag bows with 22, 24 inch tails, and I just don't really see the need to use that much fabric. So have your wreath handy. I brought these two here so we don't go crazy in creating a super huge bow that I can't use on anything else. So I have this one, which I would probably want it to cascade. You know, it would look nice if it would cascaded down about 10 inches. And then if we did something like this, like when I did Steve's mom's wreath, this is not the one, but this is just a regular rag wreath. If you were to put a bow up here, you're not going to want your, say, tails with the lace, you know, hanging way down here. It's just too long. It kind of takes away from your rag bow. It takes away from the wreath that you designed. So that's why when I made the bow after I had done the wreath, but I didn't measure it. So I had this big, super huge bow that I was intending to put here, and I couldn't put it here because I made it too big. So we had to drop it down to the bottom, and then we just extended the lace to where the lace hung down, and that's pretty much a perfect length right there, which is pretty much at 10 inches. It's actually 10 and a half to go all the way down, so I wouldn't go crazy. So figure out how long do you want the longest tail to be, and then how wide are you looking for your bow loops to be, and then you can start prepping your material. So do you guys have any questions before we start? So I just have these here for samples.
Gals are just still joining in. I asked them how the view was. They said the view is great. So
Okay, cool.
You're good.
All right. So we know that this was our perfect length, so we're not going to create tails any longer than 10 and a half inches. And there's a reason it's called a rag bow, is you're going to use it from, like how we created our rag wreath, we're going to create a rag bow much in the similar means meaning they're strips of fabric. So the strips of fabric, strips of lace, strips of, I even picked this
Muslin.
one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, muslin, and then
Muslin.
like lace. Some people take beaded pearls. You know, you're just gonna take a random whole bunch, and I'm not building it here, I'm just kind of showing you textures. Here's more muslin. Here's more like lace. So you're kind of creating these textures based on materials. So what we want to do is determine the longest length and then determine what your shortest length will be on your bow or on the length of your tails. So believe it or not, we actually start the process by the tails and then we work on the bow part. So go ahead.
Julie just asked if you would typically, it depends on the look, right? If you starch your fabric prior to like cutting them or pulling.
I don't, because I want it to be just like how, if I was doing it for this, yeah, if I want more vintage, I don't want it ironed, I don't want it starched, I don't want it perfect, I want it to look like a rag bow. So you want it to kind of have that torn kind of raggedy look like you're seeing here on this fabric here. So when I do my fabric, I'm not cutting my fabric in perfect lengths. I'm doing it and actually tearing it, like I'll show you how we're going to do that for this. So you're going to need quite a bit of tails. So again, depending upon how big and how thick you want it to be, I would say that, like when I was playing with this before we went live, I was taking various colors. Like this is a white with a leaf print on it. I was taking the muslin. I had an old piece of satin left over from Steve's mom. And then I started cutting, eeks, this is really hairy, just different pieces. And keep in mind that when you're doing this, like if you're to pull this up, you're going to be doing it in halves. So when you're doing it this way, you might go, oh, well, that's not an awful lot. I need to keep making more tails. Keep in mind when you pick it up and do it this way, you know, you're looking at that going, is that enough tails for me, or do I want more? And I think when I did it, I think I said I wanted more. And keep in mind that we're also going to be adding lace to our tails. So let me maybe put my mess back in some semblance of order. We're gonna have lace in it, we're gonna have satin in it, we're gonna have more pieces of lace. I'm actually going to take part of this. So when we pick this up and then look at it, you're starting to see the thickness of your rag bow. So this is tails only, not the loops and the tails in part of the, when we're making the bow. So you will need a Bowdabra. It makes it so much easier. You don't have to have it. You just need something to kind of lay everything in. Right. Yeah. I don't know if you could use it on the Easy Bow Maker. But let me show you what we're going to do. So we've already determined that the length of our tails, we didn't want any longer than 10 inches. So 10 and 10 is obviously going to be 20. And I might want to make them at like 22. So I'm going to actually sit here and start cutting these down. I might do 23. So these are 23 inch strips. So take your bow maker. If you want to dovetail, cut your ends. Go ahead and start dovetailing your ends. So I'm just doing these in different lengths. This was, I think it's 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 inch. You can go thicker, thinner.
Joey asked, if you put lace in it, would you need to have lace in the wreath?
No. When, I actually like the way that the lace adds to that. It's kind of like how when we did our rag wreath, we didn't do a rag bow. We just went and got regular ribbon. And so this accents, this wreath, it does not have to be the same material. This is just something different.
So it's up to you. It's your preference. If you want lace in it, you can.
Totally and completely up to you. So you're just going to take your Bowdabra and make sure that it's even. So this is the way we're going to load it. And we're loading tails first. So you'll see me just constantly sit here. And I said I think I wanted 23-inch pieces. Some of these are already cut. So I was trying to have some stuff cut beforehand. And I'll show you how we go about tearing these. So I want a pretty thick tail because I have a pretty thick rag wreath. And I don't think this will go long enough, but I'll save this for one of my shorter pieces. So let's keep this because this one's 13. So I'll kind of set that to the side. This one I think is going to be 13 too. Yeah, once I trim up the end pieces. Again, your preference, you don't have to dovetail cut them, you can leave them blunt, straight. It's entirely up to you. You could leave them all straight, create it, and then if you didn't like that, you can go back in and dovetail cut them all after you put it all together. So I'm just taking on my pieces. This one's a little thicker, because I do want some thick and some thin. So I'm going to do the same thing. We'll dovetail cut this. This one I think I did 2 inches, yeah. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
It's kind of a good thing about the rag bow, right? It doesn't have to be
It
perfect.
does not have to be perfect at all. So, and be careful, if you're listing it on Etsy, do not use the words shabby chic. It's a trademark term. And the people who own the copyrights to that are actually, they're pretty much on it when it comes. So I'm going to put the thicker stuff at the bottom on their cease and desist usage of those terms. So I'm just loading this in, just like so. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure
Right
I'm
in the
not
middle.
going too short. So it seems like when I cut these strips, I get one short and one long, and that's okay. So I'm going to leave these cut this way. So there's a 3 short, 3 long. I think I have this one. We'll cut him. I'm going to bring this one in. 1, 2, 3. Let me go. I'm going to go 5 long tails and then I'll start bringing them in shorter. So we're going to 23. And I'm just doing it based on the look I want. It's all going to be up to you. So I want this kind of thick. So this is what it would look like, not including the bows and not including the lace and other pieces. So it's getting thicker. So I want one more piece.
Well, I think that's the whole idea, right? Of the rag bow, you want it to look vintage and worn.
Mm-hmm. Which is why they're telling you, this one's perfect too. So this is the piece that has the leaves on it. So I'm just bringing that in.
Oh, you also said you could tea stain everything too, right? If you
Yes,
like
we
it,
were
right?
talking about doing the tea staining, and we just didn't have time to tea stain before we went live.
Charlotte asked, what type of material are you using?
This type of muslin is just a cotton muslin. This would be something that you would attach on the back of a quilt. So it's fairly inexpensive. I want to say it runs like maybe $2 to $3 for a yard.
Yeah.
It's really nothing. But this stuff you could stain or dye any color that you wanted. So I usually pick cotton, and I prefer the softer the cotton the better. So I'm going to make this one about 2 inches, and then I'm just going to sit here and rip it.
And that also is just an old patch.
This is a quilt, like, what do they call it?
Quarter?
A fat quarter.
A fat quarter.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just happen to have some sitting in a bin, so I just grabbed those, and I was like, oh, that's pretty. Let's grab that too. So we're just kind of mad creating these. This one's about 15. So these are all still 23. So I'm looking. Let's cut a couple more pieces off of this. So this is how my muslin came. I just have a big bolt of it. And so let's cut 2 more at 2 inches wide. I'm gonna do them like this so I can tear them both at the same time. So here's the first. There's that one. And this one. And I know I'm gonna need a couple for the bow. So let me just get those done right now. So there's 2. I know I want 3 at 2 inches. And then 2 at 1.5.
So Cheryl asked a good question. How do I know which way to rip?
Okay, I did this. So what you're supposed to do, and somebody was nice enough to comment, usually when you buy fabric at the store, it will have, it depends on how it's placed on the bolt, but what you're looking for is like the finished edge. Let's see, is it on one of these pieces? Like right here. This is a perfectly finished edge here. I don't know if you guys can see that. That's how the people who created the fabric create that piece. And wasn't it this one that we had to tear? This is how I did it. I was like, how do I do this? So I just take a small little piece like this and I start to tear it. And if my piece stays the same length,
same width,
all the way up, and you can see it's starting to get bigger. So look how it went from small to bigger. This is the wrong direction for me. So I have to cut the other way.
I think you're cutting along the bias, right?
Yeah.
Not against it.
It depends. So, like we'll try this one, because I've done it both ways, thinking I had it down pat. And see how this, where you have the finished edge, cutting along, just starting that and tearing that is going to give me those perfect, yeah. But I really don't want them this thin. I wanted them to go a little bit on the longer side for this particular pattern. So in this case, knowing that I can't get a perfect cut, you're going to have to sit here and hand cut or do your embroidery cutter and just cut them all.
Depending upon how much fabric you have.
Yeah, like if I'm working off of a fat quarter like this, and I know I want my strips a little bit longer, then I'm going to have to sit here and do manual strips so that I can go from, what did we say this one was? 14 inches, 14 and a half, all the way to, this is like 21. So again, we're looking for imperfections, not perfections, when you're doing a rag wreath. So I'm going to cut a couple of these. But that is the way that I determine, because just when I think I have it figured out and I start tearing this giant piece, it doesn't turn out the way I want. So let me finish doing these for the bow. So there's 1, 2.
I think, right, if you're buying it off the bolt in a yard, 2 yards, 3 yards,
do it this way.
they're supposed to fold it the same way that it is on the bolt.
But sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't.
And that's where it really confuses you. And then they've cut your perfect edge off. So here's my, I guess they'd call it a salvage edge, right?
Yeah.
Where it's made. So I'm going opposite of that. But on the other one, was it this one? No, this one. I had to actually cut. No, it was right. It tore out the right side.
That one, yeah.
Yeah. So it just depends on how they put it and who's cut it before. So if you're not sure because all your edges are rough, just do a small little sample piece and go from there. So these are my bow.
Oh, so you can still clean up a lot of the fray.
Yeah, you can. I'll sit here and just pull all my pieces off, which is what I did for my rag wreath. But I left some of them on too. So I needed 2 fat pieces for this. Just go ahead and pull and get all that debris off the end. There we go. 1, 2, 3.
Hey guys, just joining.
Okay, those are all finished. Let me add that. I think this is my long piece. Yes. So I'm going to add this in here. Just going to add just a little bit. And then I said I wanted a couple thin, right? I wanted to thicken it up, is what I said. So back to, we started at 23, so I'm going to bring this one at 20. And then we'll get 2 of them. What? Giles?
Yeah.
What is he doing?
He's laying on his back like an otter.
Stupid. Glad to see he's feeling better. So these are the ones I'm making a little bit shorter, but not as short as the 13s. These are 20. So I'm going to start, let me bring in one piece of lace. These stretch. Let me add in some lace to this. We're going to come in and add some more muslin, just like so, making it just a little bit thicker. These are all my shorts. Short, short, one long piece.
Any questions, gals? I think she answered your question on how do you know which way to rip it.
When in doubt, just take a small little piece and sample it. Because I've done it on 2 separate pieces, trying to do it the same on both, and one will rip one way and the other will rip a totally different way.
Hi Christine. Yeah, to recap, she's making a rag bow. So she's just showing how to cut your strips, which way to rip it, either along the bias or check it if it's folded incorrectly, how to rip it correctly, and how to put it on and how to tie it. So she's still about halfway there.
Yeah, so now I'm coming back in with those shorter pieces. These are the 13 inches, so I'm just bringing it up to almost a bow length. Taking off any excess pieces I don't like, and making it a little bit thicker, just like this. Take this piece here.
And you like to layer it from length in the back and get shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah, this is my preferred method of doing it. There's some lady, I watched her video on how she did it, and I just did not like the quality of her bow when she was finished. It was extraordinarily thick, big. She used an entire yard of fabric and cut them all the same length, staggered the lengths, and then it just had no life to it. It just hung there. It was, I call it a limpy bow. It was just how it was.
That one didn't get the tails cut.
Which one?
That one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we will cut the tails. That one. And then I'm going to add a couple pieces of lace. Then we'll add the bow part. So we're going to do the bow part pretty much just like we did this. So let me add another piece or 2 of lace.
Christine, it depends on the look you're going for. She asked what sizes and how many. So
yes, it depends, like what I told Steve. If you're taking your bow and you're making your rag, you need to predetermine how long do you want your tails to hang off. And I think on mine, I determined no more than 10 inches from the center where my bow would be. And then it just depends on you. Like, how thick do you want your tails to be? How thick do you want your bow to be? And then go from there. It's kind of hard to decide. So I'm having that one a little bit longer, and then I'm going to add this little piece here.
It's up to you if you want to dovetail the lace or not, right?
Yeah, this one I'm not going to, but it will probably cut it down just a smidge, because we decided we're not going. So these are my tails for my bow. Now what I'm going to do is come in and actually make the bow part. So it depends. If you don't want it this thick, thin it out. Don't do as much muslin. I think when I did Steve's mom's, I only did like maybe 5 pieces for the tail and then 3 pieces for the loop, and then I added my centerpiece and I was done. So it's just a preference base. So now when we're adding our bow, I'll dovetail this on one side, and I'm going with a fatter fabric on the bottom. So I'm going to start here, and it's just like we're making the bows. You're going to create your loop, and whatever size loop you want for your rag bow. So here's my loop. I'm going to do my other loop, and then I have my tail. And obviously my tail is way too long, but let me make sure my loops are the same, which they are. And then I'm going to bring this down and trim up the bow part. And then we'll dovetail this. So this is all you're doing, is you put your tails in first, then add in your bow part. It's kind of different than how we make bows when we're putting them on the wreath, and we're kind of creating tails and bows all in the same. Let's do a piece of this. I have it. I'm going to create some with this, and we know that this one will not tear in the length I want. So I'm going to do it this way and do dovetail. You could press these out if you wanted them more uniform looking, or like this one because it's been stored in the closet for a while. Knowing that I'm making the bow part, I would probably iron the bow part, because obviously this one's going to look pretty wrinkled. So here's our tail. See how big of a bow we can get this one.
Susan, that's a good question. She said the fabric is the same on both sides, right? So do you need the twist?
I do, just so that like when I'm doing it, like when I'm doing my bows, on this one, no, you don't really need the twist. So I'm trying to figure out where these ones are going to lay. It's going to be pretty short, so I'm going to hang on to that one. Because otherwise it's going to have a super short tail and you're not going to see it. It just isn't long enough. Okay. So again, we're going to go here, and then I'm doing my loop, another loop.
So the only thing the twist really kind of helps you do is that the twist will help kind of push that one bow up or down depending upon how you twist it.
Correct. Because when we're doing it, when we secure it at the end, we're going to want one of our loops here, one of our loops here, and then maybe a piece of lace here, and just be done with that part. So how many loops is entirely up to you. I think I'm only going to do like, I think I said 5 bows on top of everything. So there's that one. I'm going to go a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to add the lace. So this one's a little smaller.
It's got a lot of fray on it.
A lot of hair.
Yeah.
A lot of threads. That's okay. So we're keeping it the same. Still long. I know. You can see them here.
It's okay. We'll have to do it later.
I'm going to take those off. So there's the bow. I'm going to have that one a little bit thinner. I know it's hard to see because they're all the same color. But I just tore all my strips just to make it easy. And then
I can see how rag bows look good on a vintage type of rag wreath, but
it depends.
it's not my favorite. I like regular ribbon bows.
It looked good on your mom's wedding.
It did. It looked really good.
Right?
Because it was appropriate.
Well, yeah. We made it out of the same, and we did it the exact same way.
Right.
This is. So now I'm going to come in with some lace and make our bow. Is that the only piece? No. This one here. So we're going to come in. I'm not going to worry about dovetailing the lace, because a lot of times when you cut into the lace, it starts to unwind or fray. So I'm going to leave that a little thicker. Dragging it around with me. Okay, there's that one. We're bringing it down, cutting off the excess. So there's that one. So here's my bows. So far I have a up, a middle, and then I'm taking my lace and kind of marrying that right to the middle.
Yeah, Cheryl, that's a good point. She said it would be great for like pew bows at a wedding to put along the pews.
Or if someone's doing farmhouse, like rustic farmhouse, this is going to be the look that you want. So this piece is a tad too short. I have, let's see, I went to Walmart and I bought some of their lace, so we're going to do the same thing. It came on a roll, I think, for like $1.97. So wherever you can get your lace.
Oh, this sounds like it would have been pretty. Susan said, I put one on a magnolia wreath that had some woodland owls on it.
That would be really pretty. See, it's just up to you. You decide what kind of look you're going for, and then make them the colors or styles that are appropriate. And we're bringing this down to match, and then we'll do one more piece. So let me dovetail this one. This one's going to go to the side, so I don't need that. Don't need that. Do we want one more piece of this? I think so. I think this is how I did this one when I was playing with the layered look. So I wanted some of this on the very top. Not that it's going to make much of a bow. Okay.
But it's just like an accent piece.
Yeah, it's just really pretty. So here, we'll make our loop. Not quite so big. I'll bring this in a little. And then we'll cut these head angle, since we can't really dovetail cut them. Just like so. Okay. I think we're done.
On each side?
Huh?
You just did one loop on each side?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's a loop here.
Gotcha.
And a loop here. So that's what it looks like from your view. So when you pull all this down, less all the tails. Once we get it out of the Bowdabra, it'll look pretty amazing. Why are you nice enough to go grab it?
Is that thick enough, or you want something thicker?
This is fine. You just want the floral wire to secure all the pieces together. I'm going to measure this out to, let's err on the side of caution and go 28. You could lay it underneath when you start and then just have it ready for when you're ready to pull up. I think I can do this now. Yeah, let me have you stand over here. So I'm going to have Steve hold this. So we're going to pull it up and then just hold that carefully so it doesn't unstuck.
Yep.
So yes, put your floral wire in there first. So it makes this step so much easier. So we're just going to tie this here. And I'm going to go around.
This is where your husbands or kids can help.
No, I would have just done this earlier. I would have had it underneath. Okay. And then go ahead, let go. So now we're just going to take the whole thing and have it all done on the back side. And now I'm going to just tie it on the back.
Linda, you probably could do like a white zip tie as long as you have something to kind of hide it in the center.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you could take a piece of lace and go over the entire thing with the lace.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to sit here and kind of twist it and get a pretty good twist in there. So we've got that going. We'll turn this off. There we go. Okay, we'll bend that back. Now, this is where you can start doing all your fluffing. You would pull all your tails down. So here's all your bows here. One on the bottom, one in the middle, and this is where I was telling you, see, you want to make sure that you have enough on your bows to make your bow part
stand out over the tails.
Right. And then you want to bring all your tails down. So I'm just pulling all these pieces here down and then fluff our bow part. Just like so. So here's all our tails. Here's all your bows. Let's get this to face the right direction.
I think that one side is a little long.
Which one?
Oh, never mind. Look at the wrong one.
It's okay. When you're looking at it your way and then looking at it my way, it's okay. You might want to have like more larger loops on top. You might want to pull your lace so the lace is higher. It's just entirely up to you. So you have a lace high and a lace low. And then this stuff in the center. And then what you can add to your centers, Steve's mom was really particular that she's very fond of angels, so we found an angel pin to include here. People have taken like cameos, like you could do your grandmother's vintage cameo and put that in the center.
A brooch, yeah.
Yeah, a brooch, an old pin, break down a bracelet. Which is what I did. I had a bracelet like this and I just pulled off some of the hearts. So you have like your heart centerpiece. So you can add that to your center. You can get a large button. Keep in mind that the more stuff that you're adding in cost. So you don't want to go buy, say for example, I don't know, a $10 button. Unless you're buying them in like a set of 4 or 5 and you can, break down the per unit cost to where it's only like $2. So you can do it this way where you can add a charm off of an old charm bracelet.
Yeah, that's pretty. I like that heart.